We all know that Cam Coleman and Rasheem Biles are the headliners for the Texas Longhorns transfer portal haul. But who are the most important additions not named Coleman and Biles?
Yards shy of the record. Williams breaks a hole. Williams had a record book. Ricky Williams runs to the Hall of Fame. Touchback. Ricky Williams, touchdown.
Young from the shotgun. Back to throw. Vince looks. Under pressure. He'll tuck it in run. Vince to the 5. Young. Touchdown, Texas. Touchdown, Vince Young. He's done it again.
Longhorn Nation, we're back.
Welcome into another edition of the Texas Longhorns on SI podcast. I'm your host, Matt Galatson, and I'm joined today, as always, by my co-host, Zach Dimmitt. And Zach, we all know that Cam Coleman and Rasheem Biles are pretty much the two headliners for the Longhorns transfer portal class. Coleman was arguably the most coveted player in the entire portal. Texas lands him, and even if he's like one of your only transfer portal additions, you feel really, really good about it because he's an absolute game changer. Kind of the same for Rasheem Biles on the other side of the ball. You desperately needed a linebacker. You went out and got arguably the best one in the portal. So putting those two players aside, I thought it would be a fun discussion for us to, kind of decide who is the most important addition that the Longhorns made outside of their headliners, the ones that are going to make the biggest difference on the field next season. And I'll start off here, Zach, and I'm going to kind of cheat a little bit as I usually do in these kinds of situations. I'm going to go with Melvin, Ciani, and Lawrence Seymour because I think that adding one is great, but you still kind of had something to figure out along the offensive line. But with the combination of both of them, now that really allows you to complete your offensive line starting unit. You can move Brandon Baker or Andre Kojo to left guard, and now you all of a sudden feel really good about the position group that was easily your biggest weak point last season throughout the entire year. Now it goes from an obvious weak point to one that, assuming Lawrence Seymour gets cleared, and his eligibility is taken care of, and he's a part of this football team next year. It's a unit that, perhaps rivals the one that you had in 2024 and 2023 with Kelvin Banks, Jake Majors, Hayden Connor, DJ Campbell, and Christian Jones / Cameron Williams. I mean, you got to feel really good about this with both of those guys in the fold.
Yeah, the offensive line is certainly more talented heading into this season, especially when you assume that Lawrence Seymour is going to get cleared with his eligibility. The talent level certainly can rival that 2024 group. I do think that 2024 group had something that this year's group probably won't, and that's the continuity that all those guys had, which is hard to replicate out of the portal. But, it's certainly going to be better than it was this past year. That's for sure. But you still retain some key pieces there, and you had to address something out of the portal. And I think Texas did a good job there. I'm with you there. It can't be overstated how important those guys will be. Again, it's not as sexy of an addition as Biles, Coleman, Raleek Brown, Hollywood Smothers, and those guys, because those guys are going to be your playmakers. They're going to make all the highlights. But yeah, I agree with you there. For me, I think one of the most important guys out of the portal for Texas is definitely going to be Bill Masco. He's not necessarily an under the radar guy or anything like that. I think a lot of fans are really excited about his arrival. And it was certainly significant whenever the Longhorns were able to snag him out of the portal. But just when you look at the rest of the secondary, cornerbacks, safeties all around, it's a pretty young group for the most part. Of course, you have Jelani McDonald. You have Derek Williams returning, Kobe Black. It's hard to, crazy that he's already going to be in his third season. Feels like he just got on campus. But when you look at some of the youth, and some of these guys have been here for a few years, but not a lot of them have played in major games and taken major CFP snaps or anything like that. So still. Overall, an unproven group at some areas. Of course, Jelani McDonald's going to be a superstar once again, in my opinion, and rise to new levels. But when you have a young group like that and you're able to get a guy with experience like Bo Masco, of course, yes, he doesn't have the CFP experience either, but he's taken significant snaps in the Big Ten. And so I think that can't be overstated, because when you lose Malik Muhammad, who was that experienced guy, Jalen Gilbo as well. And, speaking of which, both those guys are at the combine today doing some drills, which is good to see for them. But when you lose those guys, it's hard to just, replicate that experience with the current roster. So they had to get someone out of the portal. And I think Bo Masco can definitely do that when it comes to, replicating some of that experience. But of course, he has to, get on that postseason stage as well. But I think that one's going to be super big, because he's now going to be your, potential number one cornerback, barring something unforeseen where Cade Phillips just blows the coaching staff out of the water. Because I just, I think Bo Masco is going to be that number one guy, but Cade Phillips certainly is going to be very talented as well. But the Grayson Littleton, another young guy in there. So it's a lot of youth, but a lot of talent. But I think that experience can't be overlooked. And Bo Masco, I think, will bring that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And he was the second highest rated corner in the Big Ten last year, according to PFF. There was a lot of good corners in the Big Ten last year, and Rutgers doesn't get all the pub because they weren't a very good team last year. And despite the schedule that he faced, he ended up performing very well. And, when you lose a guy like Malik Muhammad, who had so many skins on the wall, was obviously your leader in the cornerback room, adding a guy that has that kind of experience and those kinds of reps to his name is extremely important. I mean, he went up against Oregon last year. He went up against Ohio State, Illinois, some pretty good teams. Washington was a pretty good team. Iowa was a pretty good team in the Big Ten, and he held up pretty well in all of those games. So I'm excited to see what he can do. Let's do this too, Zach, and I'm kind of springing this on you last second, but I think it's going to be a fun conversation. How about the most underrated one in the class overall? I think that we could go a lot of different directions with this one, depending on what side of the ball you want to go to. I'll go first here again, so that you can kind of think about yours while I'm talking. But I'm going to go with Michael Masoonis, the tight end. People thought, okay, Texas needs a tight end with Jack Andrews leaving, and a lot of the talk was, well, do we need another Gunnar Helm? Do we need another Jack Andrews type who's like a receiver that can make plays downfield? And they already have that with Nick Townsend, assuming he can take a step forward. Amari Winston also has that kind of in his game as well. So what they needed to do was go out and get a real true inline blocking tight end that can move people and be an asset in the run game when they do that 12 personnel type stuff, which when they tried to run it last year was just kind of a disaster because they didn't have anybody with that skill set. Now you add Michael Masoonis to the mix, and all of a sudden you feel really good about that, the opportunity to do that, and it's going to help your new outside zone run game as well with Smothers and Brown. I think he's just a really great complementary piece to all the other things they added on offense.
Yeah, you stole mine there, so appreciate that. I agree. I agree with you there. There's a few names to look at. Certainly, Michael Masoonis is one of those. I'm interested to see what he can do, because he's not necessarily going to blow you away with, pass catching ability, but we'll see. He may surprise some of us. I think Jack Andrews is going to be hard to get a guy like that when it comes to the receiving ability out of the portal. So it's going to be looking a little bit different at the position, but I think it'll be for the best. So I agree with you there. For an underrated guy, there's a few names to look at. I was thinking of like Ian Jaffrard, but I personally think he won't necessarily be underrated. I think he's going to be a beast on the defensive line. So underrated probably doesn't fit him there. I'll go with Justin Cryer, linebacker out of Florida State. He's got some experience under his belt. Not the most eye-popping stats you've ever seen during his 3 years there, but I think he's going to bring some experience to that position. I think the entire linebacker room is just going to turn a lot of heads this upcoming season, of course, with Rasheem Biles, then Ty Anthony Smith, Tyler Atkinson. Of course, you get Marcus Boswell as well. He's going to be a little bit more of a project, I think, in the long run. But Justin Cryer, with his experience, he'll be able to contribute right away, and I think you'll see him make some big plays. Like I said, a lot of the attention is going to go to Rasheem Biles, to Anthony Smith, and I think Tyler Atkinson will be that number 3 guy potentially. But if he's not ready, which I would be surprised if he's not, Justin Cryer could step up and be a pivotal piece in that linebacker room. And so I think he's definitely going to be an underrated guy to watch for. because his addition was a little bit more on the quiet side. I would say Texas fans certainly paid attention to it, but nationally it was a little bit more of a quiet addition. But he's got some experience, like I said, and so that can't be overlooked. And so I think he fits perfectly into that category because he may not dominate all the headlines at the end of the year, but I think he'll be able to make some plays, as the season goes on, and definitely fit that kind of underrated label.
Yeah, and just to kind of add to that a little bit, he was going to be my other pick if I decided to go on the defensive side of the ball. And the reason being is because Rasheem Biles and Anthony Smith kind of naturally play the same position. I think you're going to see a lot of them on the field together. Obviously, it would be a crime to only have one of them on the field when both of them are so talented, especially Rasheem Biles being the playmaker that he is. But Justin Cryer fits the mold of a true Will Muschamp Mike linebacker. He's big, he's physical, he's a thumper, and he can get in there and disrupt the run game and play really well behind a giant nose tackle like Ian Gaffard. So I like him a lot. I think he's going to be a really good player in this system, and I think that they did a great job of rebuilding that room as a whole, which was going to be really difficult to do after the loss of Anthony Hill. And Leongo Lafau leaving was disappointing. Bo Barnes leaving was disappointing. But I think overall, if you sat there and told me that we're basically trading Leongo Lafau and Elijah Barnes for Juice Cryer and Rasheem Biles, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I'll take that trade for sure. So it's going to be a really good linebacker room, and I'm really excited to see it. Let's move on to the NFL Combine, Zach, because we had a few guys for Texas that have gone and done some workouts, and they've been performing incredibly well thus far. Obviously, the headliner that everybody wants to know about is Anthony Hill, and he ran his 40 time, ran a great time for him, 4.51. That's gonna help him a lot in his draft, stock and his draft status, because you got to have a little bit of speed to play the linebacker position in the NFL. He measured out at 6'2", 238 pounds, good size for him, good arm length at 32 and 3/8, and good hand size as well. But he also did a 1.58 10-yard split, a 37-inch vertical jump, 10.5 broad jump. And the one that I was a little disappointed in was the bench press reps. He only had 21 bench press reps, where there were some guys that outperformed him there. But overall, he's had a really, really good combine so far.
Yeah, I was really looking forward to seeing what Anthony Hill could do. I think the world of this guy, and I know Texas fans do as well. Maybe I'm a little biased because just working with the media and seeing him, talking to him, just his infectious personality, it really draws a lot of attention. And it's so funny to see how playful and funny he is off the field, but then he gets on the field and he's just an absolute monster. I'm a little biased there. I really think the world of Anthony Hill and hope he does well in the league. And certainly with his combine performance, I think a lot of teams are going to be moving him up a little bit on their draft boards. He entered Indianapolis kind of as a second round sort of guy. But I think that there's a ceiling for him to potentially move up into late first round if some of these results grab some attention. There's been some doubt. I remember during the season, ESPN there's an ESPN piece where an anonymous scout said that some of Anthony Hill's draft stock is a little bit overhyped because of the Longhorn logo, which is frankly ridiculous in my opinion, because
Absurd.
Texas has sent many players to the league during the Steve Sarkisian era, and Anthony Hill is arguably among the best of that group, and he'll join that group in a couple months. So just a little bit ridiculous there. I'd like to know who that scout was, but it's beside the point. But Anthony Hill, good time for him there. I think that his speed was never in question during his time at Texas, and so you like to see that he had a good time there. But Trey Moore as well. He was a guy who started off UTSA. Was unranked coming out of high school. Me and him actually went to the same high school, so always got a little bit of soft spot for him as well. But he has risen up tremendously during his time at UTSA and then at Texas, and so he had a nice little time there as well. I don't have it pulled up in front of me. I don't know if you
4.54 for Trey Moore, which is a great time.
Yeah, and he's not really necessarily known as a super speedy guy. So that's definitely a good time for him. You love to see his rise over the past couple of years. And then today, Malik Muhammad, he was running as well. I know Michael Taff was doing some interviews. Jalen Gilbo was doing some interviews yesterday. But Malik Muhammad today, he runs a 4.42 unofficial, or that might be official now. This is all coming in over the past like 30 minutes or so. But yeah, 4.42 for Malik Muhammad. Good time there for him. I think a lot of teams think the world of him. And so interested to see where he goes. He was a tough loss, for Texas, during this offseason, but we all kind of expected that. He was going to be a 3-and-done guy. And he definitely has proven that at the combine today.
Yeah, I'm very pleased with his 4.42 time. If you kind of look at it, I'm going to bring up some of these numbers so you can kind of see where they sit in comparison to the rest of the combine attendees. We'll start with Malik Muhammad, since that's who we just talked about. I mean, that's 8th among corners, and it's really tight there. Like once Toriano Pride Jr. from Missouri ran a 4.32, and that was far and away the best time. Dalen Everett with a 4.38 was the second best time. But then, from Malik Muhammad all the way down to Latrell Murchison from Houston, it's a 4.40, 4.41, 4.42, 4.43. So they're all kind of right there. So he's running. He ran a great time for himself in that regard. And if you look at the linebacker group, Anthony Hill was the 3rd fastest linebacker to run a 40, just behind Sonny Styles and Caleb Alarms Orr from TCU. And it's interesting because they don't list Trey Moore as a linebacker. They list him as an edge because he was working out with the edges yesterday, and he ran the 4th best time for an edge yesterday, ahead of Cassius Howell from Texas A&M. Just behind Malachi Lawrence, David Bailey, and Arvell Reese from Ohio State, who is probably going to be a top 2 pick. Like, that guy's insane. And I'm kind of surprised he's listed as an edge because I always kind of pictured him as just a traditional linebacker. But, I mean, he's an absolute freak of nature, so I'm not surprised to see that he's going to be doing some other things at the NFL level. It's interesting, Zach, because some of the Longhorn players still haven't, gone yet. We're still waiting on Jalen Gilbo, and we're still waiting on Michael Taff. And I'm not sure exactly what they're going to do at the combine, if they're going to run every drill or anything like that. But
yeah, CJ Vogel of On Texas Football does great work over there. He just reported on X that Jalen Gilbo is opting not to run at the combine. So
makes sense.
And interesting there, he could have potentially boosted his draft stock, but he's not necessarily a super speedy guy. That's not really what he was known for. So maybe he's doesn't want to risk a bad time. But in my opinion, I don't know if I agree with that decision, because when you're in his position where he's not like a surefire high draft pick or anything like that, you want to try to boost your stock in any way you can. And it's not like a slower time is going to hurt him in too much. But interesting decision there from Jalen Gilbo. That just came in a few minutes ago. So I guess he made that decision today, and he's just hoping for the best once the draft goes around. But we'll have to see if he does any other drills.
Yeah, a lot of times if guys, aren't comfortable with the 40 time they're running at the current moment, they'll opt to do it at the pro day.
Right.
So I assume that's what Jalen Gilbo is going to do. He's just going to opt to do it during the pro day, and then we'll see what happens there. He's kind of one of those guys that's on the fringe of being drafted at all, in my opinion. So, he needs all the extra help he can get. So if he can keep training and get that 40 time up a little bit, I think that'll help him in the long run. But yeah, we're still waiting on Michael Taff, and we're still waiting on a few of the other guys on the other side of the ball. But overall, really, really good performances so far from the Longhorns that have participated in the combine, and you love to see it because we know that these guys are talented. I will fight tooth and nail against whatever analyst or scout that was that labeled Anthony Hill overrated because of the Longhorn on his helmet. I think that is arguably the most ridiculous thing that I've heard out of this draft process so far when it pertains to Longhorns. Lance Zierlein of NFL Network, or NFL.com, I should say, compares him to Bobby Wagner, which I don't know if everybody listening to this podcast knows who Bobby Wagner is, but he's a future Hall of Fame linebacker. Like that guy's an incredible player, and he's on the tail end of his career now. But when he was in the prime of his career, he was an absolute star. So if you're getting compared to that guy, I think you should feel pretty good about it. If you saw some of the plays that Anthony Hill made, like you just watched him week by week, like go back to the Georgia game with that interception that he had, where he's kind of backtracking on the field and he turns his hips and goes up in the air and grabs it behind his head. Like that is such an incredibly hard play to make. Very few players at the college level can make that play, and he was able to do it and make it look easy. So that should tell you everything you need to know about Anthony Hill as a player. Is he perfect? No, he's got some weaknesses. Every player does. Lance Zierlein's weaknesses for him include production boosted by a heavy dose of run blitz calls, which, okay, like he played well in the defensive scheme that was called for him. I don't know why that's a weakness. Occasionally allows cutback opportunities to develop. That's fair. Blitz disguise and trigger timing are below average. I think that's pretty fair. He can be a little bit better in that area. He can carry routes a step longer in zone coverage, and his missed tackles spiked in 2024. That was 2 years ago. So I don't know if that necessarily pertains to last year, which was 2025. It seemed like he was a little bit better in the missed tackles department last year, but that's just me. I'm a big Anthony Hill fan. I've been following him since he was like a sophomore at Denton Ryan, and I think he's going to be an incredible pro, and whatever team gets him is going to be very happy about it. But let's take a break real quick, Zach. Then we come back. We got some big basketball news plus a game to preview for the weekend. So we'll talk about that next year on the Texas Longhorns on SI podcast.
This episode of the Texas Longhorns on SI podcast is brought to you by Custom Built Trailers of Mississippi. Custom Built Trailers is the largest in-stock trailer dealer in Mississippi with a variety of options to choose from flatbed goosenecks to bumper pull equipment trailers and car haulers to enclosed trailers and basic utility trailers. We do a little bit of everything. And if we don't have exactly what you're looking for in stock, we can typically have your custom-built trailer built in 7 to 10 working days. 0% financing options are available, and we also deliver out of state. So give Custom Built Trailers of Mississippi a call at 601-722-9581 today and let us take care of your hauling needs. Custom Built Trailers of Mississippi. If we don't have it, we'll be glad to build it.
Welcome back to the Texas Longhorns on SI podcast. I'm your host, Matt Galatson, joined by my co-host, Zach Dimmitt. Zach, we'll start with the big news for Texas basketball today. They announced a home-and-home series with the Memphis Tigers. I believe it starts next year and the year after. I didn't see in the announcement which game is where first, so I'm sure you'll be able to clear that up for me. But it's a big one. I mean, it's a I know Memphis isn't a great team this year. I think they're 12-16 overall right now. But the 3 years previous, I believe they made the tournament under Penny Hardaway. At least 3 of the last 4 years they've made it. And historically, Memphis is a very good program under John Calipari. And then since they've been a very consistent, good program, and they really put a lot into their basketball program over there. So I like that it's not Duke, because I understand why Texas does it. They scheduled Duke and UConn in the same year, and I'm like, okay, that's a choice because they're both really good programs. And but you got to have quality teams on your schedule in the non-con, and Memphis is certainly going to be one of those over the next couple of years.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it has not been a good season for them. Penny Hardaway, even, I think it was like last week when he was getting interviewed after a loss, he was like tearing up because I think he's been so frustrated with this season. But despite that, it's college basketball. So these teams can change like that from season to season. And it certainly hasn't been easy this year, but they made it to the NCAA tournament 3 of the past 4 years under Penny Hardaway. Last year, they were 29-6. They won the American Conference regular season title and the tournament title, and went to the NCAA tournament. So yeah, great program there. So hopefully, for Texas's sake, whenever Memphis comes to the Moody Center next season, that'll be the first matchup on December 16th. Hopefully, for Memphis is a stronger program, so a potential win will look better for the Longhorns. If they can pull that off. So we'll see what happens. Still a long ways away. But yeah, interesting news here. Kind of came out of nowhere. But these non-conference matchups are going to start getting announced as time goes on, and certainly into the off season. As far as the non-con goes for Texas next season, they're going to be playing in the Rady Children's Invitational in late November. So they were in the Maui Invitational this past season, but this season, I believe that's in like Florida or San Diego. It's in San Diego. So the field includes Georgetown, St. Mary's, and UCLA. It's an all right field. I think UCLA and St. Mary's are solid teams, but Georgetown, they're a little bit up and down. So, but we don't know who Texas is going to play yet for in that invitational. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, interesting to see the series with Memphis. They're going to be playing at FedEx Forum in the 27-28 season, but we don't know the date for that quite yet. So Texas leads the all-time series 4-2 against Memphis. Of course, it was in 2008, I believe, where Texas lost in the Elite Eight to Memphis, and that was with Derrick Rose and John Calipari. Memphis ended up going to the Final Four in the national title game, and they ended up losing that one in San Antonio. So, interesting one there, and excited to see that one in many months in December.
Yeah, I remember that Derrick Rose Memphis team very well, and that was when Derrick Rose was a player. I know that the Derrick Rose is the one issue. How would he as an NBA player? Kind of, and when he at Memphis, and then in his first couple years in Chicago, that team was a tough out, and a big reason of that was for him. So I don't know that Memphis is going to have anybody like that on the roster because they don't come around very often. But they're going to be a pretty good matchup for the Longhorns in 2026 and 2020. Where in the basketball front, Zach, big game for the Longhorns this weekend. They travel to College Station to take on the Texas A&M Aggies in what kind of feels like a must-win game for the Longhorns. They're currently, right there on the bubble, really right alongside Texas A&M. Both of these teams are kind of in a similar position, and Texas A&M already has the edge on Texas right now because of a victory early on in the season. But Texas is sitting at 17-11. A&M is at 19-9. The ESPN matchup predictor gives Texas A&M a 65.2% chance to win the game. The line has not been released yet, but I would imagine Texas A&M is favored in that game, obviously because of the ESPN matchup predictor and all that. But the game tips off at 3 p.m. tomorrow from Reed Arena. And Texas needs to figure out what went wrong in that last game. A big part of it was they did not have an answer for Rashawn AG. Do they have an answer this time? Probably not, because they don't have a guy that can defend the 4 position very well. The defense has been lacking incredibly over the last few weeks. We've talked about that over the last couple shows. But the offense has found its rhythm, and it's been humming. So this could end up being an offensive shootout in Aggieland.
Yeah, that's what I'm anticipating as well, is that it'll be kind of a high-scoring game. The last matchup wasn't exactly high-scoring. I think both teams were like really cold in the first half. And then kind of
it was like 74-70 or something like that.
Yeah, 74-70. So both these teams can get into those 80s. And it was kind of surprising that they weren't able to, because it was just a sluggish first half by both sides. But the Aggies were able to pull away, in large part due to many defensive breakdowns from Texas. I mean, give credit to A&M. They hit their shots, but I mean, they were getting some wide open looks, and it was just constant backdoor cuts that Texas was unable to cover. Rylan Griffin was great in that game. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Both of these teams kind of have a lot of their production come from one guy, Dalen Swain from Texas and Rashawn Agee with Texas A&M. So, yeah, it's kind of a must-win for both sides. I mean, A&M and Texas are kind of right there in similar positions. The Aggies have 2 less losses, but the Longhorns have better wins, and so it's just kind of you might be seeing these two be side by side when they're being compared by the committee on Selection Sunday. Who knows? Imagine both these teams meeting in the first 4 at Dayton. That would be a sight to see. So. It's kind of a must win, because if you're A&M, you want to get to that 20 win mark. And if you're Texas, a road win in conference play against a team that's currently projected in the field will be a quad one win, and that could potentially solidify Texas's spot in the bracket. Because if you beat A&M, let's say you lose to Arkansas, and then you beat Oklahoma in the season finale at home, you're right there, that 19 win mark, and then you can pick up a win in the SEC tournament. You'll feel pretty good about your chances of being in the bracket while avoiding Dayton. So it's a really big game for Texas because of the opportunity that's at hand. But if you're A&M, you can't be dropping a home game to a team you already beat. So it's a really, really big game for both sides. I've seen multiple bracket predictors have these two teams right next to each other when it comes to where they are in the seed line. So really interesting to see what will happen tomorrow. I'll be at that game covering it for Texas Longhorns on SI. So yeah, I expect it to be really loud at Reed Arena. If A&M can sweep the season series, that'll be big time, especially with some of the close losses that A&M suffered to Texas last season. So we'll have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, and Texas has lost 2 straight. They lost to Florida by 16 on Wednesday. And A&M is coming off of a loss to themselves to Arkansas, where they lost by 15. So neither of these teams played their best game their last time out. Both games, they played well in spurts, but they weren't able to kind of hang with the superior teams. We'll see if Texas can kind of get the answer and get the Aggies back. Texas A&M got the win in Austin the first time around. Now Texas has an opportunity to go to College Station and get their revenge and help to solidify their tournament seed. So that'll be something to watch for. And we'll be back on Monday to kind of recap that game, talk about the NFL Combine some more, and then, kind of get into some more Texas football. So make sure to tune in then and join us on Monday for that. But thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of the Texas Longhorns on SI podcast. Please make sure to like, subscribe, and rate our podcast, and comment down below on YouTube to let us know your thoughts. It really helps us out in the algorithm on YouTube. But most importantly, be sure to tell somebody you love them, and we will catch you in the next